So I've been looking for a slightly new way to play Magic the Gathering, and I pitched an idea to my friends, and everyone seemed to really love it, and I'm gonna pitch it to you, and we're gonna make a new format together. The whole concept revolves around this card. Remember this card? This card was awesome. We were all super hyped about it. It's thematically super cool. It's flavorful. Its art is amazing. Like, all the versions of the art are super amazing. I wanted to make a game where this was the major component to it, because this card doesn't really see play anywhere. It's not really good enough for standard. It's definitely not good for anything beyond that. So here's the concept. It's a 1v1 format, and each player starts with one of these cats on the battlefield. 40 card deck, singleton. You're already probably thinking this is like Commander, but it's kind of not. We're getting rid of some of that baggage with Commander and some of the restrictions. One of the big differences is there's no color identity. You can build a deck however you want with whatever colors you would like. You can make it 1 color, 5 color, it doesn't super matter. Your mana base obviously has to support it, but there's nothing linking your deck to a color of any kind other than how you construct it. And don't think that you need to have black because you're playing the cat. I'll explain how you get around the fact that you will never have to recast the cat. Also, super important, your deck can only contain spells of mana value 1. It also can't contain any cards that are creature type. Notice I said cards, so you can't run Dryad Arbor. You can run cards that create tokens that are creatures or become creatures. You just cannot run any other card that is the type creature. And with 1 mana value, that just means in the top right corner, the mana value is 1. You can play X spells, you can play things with Kicker, you can play things with Spree, you can play Talents. There are a handful of different things that cost 1, but have an additional cost, or there's other things you can do to make them become more expensive or grow. All that matters, top right corner, that value equals 1. And no 0, just 1. So lands and 1, no 0. Also super important, you only start with 9 life. So we're kind of doing something very thematic here. You have 9 life, you have the cat. The cat has 9 lives because it has the 8 additional ones. It's almost like a form of the cat format is what we've created here. So you're probably already thinking how you're going to game this format, and the format is built so you can't game it, at least the way that you're initially thinking. So there's one golden rule that has a bunch of different iterations here, and that is you can't make the cat do what the cat doesn't want to do. If you've ever owned a cat, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. And so in other words, the cat wants to come back. So you cannot stop the cat from coming back. So let me explain. First rule, you cannot exile the cat. You cannot Swords to Plowshare, you cannot Path to Exile. You also cannot exile the card from a graveyard. So in that moment of time where it's in the graveyard waiting to come back, you cannot cling to dust the cat. You cannot bounce the cat. So you cannot play Unsummon against the cat. You cannot bring the cat back to someone's hand because if someone's deck isn't black, they cannot recast the cat. The cat starts on the battlefield, it is going to go to the graveyard, it will come back to the battlefield. You also cannot stifle the cat's triggered ability either. You can't make it so the triggered ability doesn't resolve and it doesn't come back. So no stifle, no consign to memory. You also can't make the cat lose all abilities. There's a handful of spells that do this. They don't work against the cat. You also can't put the cat into the library. You cannot put it on top or bottom. You can't tuck it. You cannot shuffle it into the library from the graveyard. You cannot put it from the graveyard on top of the library. It's got to go from the graveyard to the battlefield. And you cannot reanimate your opponent's cat. You can't permanently gain control of your opponent's cat. So if there was ever a blue card that cost 1 and was gain control of target creature with mana value 3 permanently, that wouldn't be allowed as well. If you come into a questionable situation, fall back on the golden rule and let me know. I feel like I've covered everything, but there's a chance I may have missed some. And notice that I'm saying against the cat. So that doesn't mean that Swords to Plowshares is banned. It doesn't mean that Unsummon is banned. It doesn't mean you can't play these effects. These effects just have no effect on the cat. So you might have a very good reason to want to play something like Stifle, but you just cannot use them against the cat, or at least that effect will not resolve against the cat. There might be a weird situation where you want to Swords to Plowshare a cat so you can gain the life, but similarly to Indestructible, it will just have no effect. All right, so now you're starting to understand what we're doing here. Now I can see the gears in your brain still turning and you're like, I got the way to beat this. Next rule. All direct damage dealt to you by your opponents is prevented. So if you tap a Sulphurous Springs, it will deal damage to you, but you cannot deal damage to your opponent with Lightning Bolt. So Galvanic Discharge is the burn spell you want to play in this format. Notice I'm saying damage is prevented. Life loss is allowed. So Bump in the Night is legal. It's on a watch list, but it's legal. And that's the crux of the format. That is deck construction and that's how it's going to play. Now, let's go over a short ban list. There are some cards that actually are fully banned. So here we go. The first one is Grafdigger's Cage because it breaks the format. That one's an easy one. Gone. Next card that's banned is the Ozolith, because that creates some weird infinite loop with the counters where the cat will just never go away, so that's gotta be banned. Price of Betrayal is also banned. It can remove 5 counters from the cat, and that kind of defeats the purpose, so that card has to be banned for functionality reasons. I know I said you can't make the cat lose all of its abilities. On top of that, the card Barrow Blade is also banned. We're just making that one outright banned. The land Ice Flow is banned. It disrupts combat in a way that really doesn't work in this format, so that had to go. Maze of Ith is legal though. Another card that's banned, Swift Reconfiguration. This was actually added after playtesting a ton of games. What we realized is by this turning the cat into a non-creature artifact, it was really difficult for a lot of decks to deal with this, because the way they would deal with the cat being locked down is by sacrificing it, dealing damage to it, causing it to fight, giving it protection, and by having it be a non-creature artifact, a lot of spells and therefore a lot of decks just simply couldn't deal with this, and it would pretty much end the game. And then we have a couple of power/money bans. Note that at no time have I said that this is a casual format. Like, obviously this is not a competitive format sponsored by Wizards of the Coast or anything like that, but this is meant to be where you should be able to play as hard as you want, and it should be totally acceptable. To go with that, there needs to kind of be a certain upper cap, so we have a couple ways to do that. Here's the big one. Old school dual lands are banned. If you want to run a bunch of additional colors, there's going to be a cost to it, a cost of either life or a cost of time. You cannot smoothly just get a fetch land and go get all of your mana fixed. Dual lands are also incredibly cost prohibitive. We don't want people to not be able to play this because they cannot get dual lands. I also don't want people playing 5-color piles, and getting rid of dual lands is a good clean way to do that. If you want to start fixing your mana, you're going to be paying 1 to 3 life per fix, and when you only start at 9 life, that's going to hurt real hard real fast. Also, Ancestral Recall is banned. I'm sorry guys, I know you all want to play Ancestral Recall and it's absolutely amazing in the format, but because of the price and because of the power, it has to go. Similarly, Mishra's Workshop is also banned. Because of the cost and because of the power. The ability to just tap for 3 and unload your entire hand of artifacts and equipment, too strong, too strong. A couple of other unfortunate bans, and that's the 2 anti-cards that cost only 1. One being Jeweled Bird, which is actually a totally fine card. The other one is Contract from Below, and that one has to be banned. And that's it. Those are the only cards that are banned. There's a watch list for sure, and I'm gonna put out a video discussing those and explain why certain cards are on the watch list. Currently, this is existing as a best of 1 format. If you want to play it as best of 3, I suggest a 7-card sideboard. Depending on how the meta shakes out and how your friends are playing, you might need that 7-card sideboard, so we're kind of getting into the very like arena style kind of play. You can access your sideboard as you would like a wish board. There's only 1 card that lets you access it. It can only access 1 card, and that 1 card interacts with 0 viable cards. But if in the future there is a card that costs 1 mana that lets you access your sideboard, it's completely legal. There is a Return to Strixhaven coming up, and that might be the one that gets us there. One detail that's not super intuitive, since the starting player started their turn with the cat on the battlefield, that cat can attack the first turn. This creates a very interesting dynamic from the very first turn. So those are the rules and those are the deck construction. So let me help you get some ideas while you start brewing your first deck, because there's some cards that do some interesting things in this format that you may not totally catch at first glance. Pongify. If you Pongify your own cat, you get a 3/3 and a cat back. Pretty good. Biggest staple of the format, Mental Misstep. It should be in every deck, hands down, no questions asked. Now, you might say it should be banned for ubiquity reasons. I say that it's not banned for the same reason that Force of Will isn't banned in Legacy. Obviously, it's not the same ubiquity, but this is the glue that holds this format together. Mental Misstep is going to be a good, clean way for everyone to have a way to interact. Similarly, Mutagenic Growth is probably in most decks. Gutshot is probably in most decks also. Gitaxian Probe, that's up to you. If you want to pay 2 life to look at your opponent's hand and cantrip, go for it, but I don't think that's as powerful when all you have is 9 life. Another key staple, Urza Saga. When everything costs 1, Urza Saga is really good. Some decks may not play it, most decks will, and if you're playing that, you're probably also playing Shadow Spear. You're probably also playing Skull Clamp, because Skull Clamp you can attach to the cat to draw 2 cards, so for 2 mana you draw 2 cards, and then for 1 mana you keep drawing cards. Another staple you probably want to include, Strip Mine. There's a lot of man lands, there's a lot of utility lands, so you probably want to run Strip Mine to deal with some of those. One thing to note when building your mana base is that with every spell costing 1, almost all of your spells are going to require colored mana. Now, there's obviously artifacts that you can run, and there's cards that are hybrid that you can run that is going to be irrelevant of the color, but you're going to need a lot of the colored pips. But you definitely want to play some utility lands because they're kind of acting like spells, and there's ways that you could do things that pump up the cat, or protect the cat, or make it so the cat can get through, or let you draw cards like Bazaar of Baghdad. And as mentioned, these lands are a good avenue to get a couple additional threats and creatures. Be cautious about this strategy because it's a lot slower than simply attacking with the cat that you start with. Another thing that you can do to the cat that is not banned is you can tap down the cat. There are a couple of enchantment auras that cost 1 that tap the cat and make it so it can't untap. That effect isn't banned because there are plenty of ways to deal with that in every single different color, whether it's sacrificing or fighting or dealing damage or destroying the enchantment. There's lots of ways to get around that, but it is a strong strategy to tap your opponent's cat when it can't untap. Another big staple of the format, crop rotation. It costs 1. We're talking about all the good utility lands and lands that can do cool things. Crop rotation is one of the best tutors to go get you that. And you can crop rotation to Urza Saga, which is pretty great. Note at the beginning I said that all your spells have to cost 1, but you can play X spells, and there's some really good X spells that cost 1. One of the big ones that jumps out to me, Mind Twist. And as I said, this isn't necessarily a casual format. You could push this as hard as you want. You can Culling the Weak into Dark Ritual into Mind Twist on turn 1. Perfectly legal play, totally acceptable. You just better hope your opponent doesn't have Divert. And then there's plenty of other good X spells. Tyvar Stand, Volgavoss Onslaught, and many more. Another card that's really strong in this format, Claim the Firstborn. For 1 mana, you can steal your opponent's cat, and then you can use it to attack. So if they've put a bunch of equipment or auras on it, you're getting their pumped up cat. Or you can take that cat and you can Skull Clamp it and then draw an extra card. Here's a couple cards you probably never heard of. Elephant Grass. Black creatures can't attack. Pretty great. Black Scarab. This is from a series where there was 1 for every opposing color. So this one's really good when your opponent is going to have a black cat for sure. And speaking of your opponent's cat being black, Dark Betrayal. This destroys a black creature. Go look up Trash the Town and The Great Train Heist. Both of those, A+. You also know your opponent doesn't have any creature cards in their deck, so that means Duress is way better than Thoughtseize in this format. Save yourself the 2 life. And Cabal Therapy is also legal, so you can get 2 cards. And one of my personal favorites that I just want to mention, Rites of Initiation. You want to go aggro? This is one of the best cards to do it. So if you're interested, build a deck and put it on Moxfield. Add the name Catfight somewhere in the deck list and I'll be able to find it, or you can just send it directly to me. I'm really interested in what other people build and I'm really interested to play games with this. Here's an example of a deck that I've been playing and having an absolute blast with. I put some additional links for other decks we've been playtesting in the description as well, so check those out. One thing to note is games go fast. We're usually talking 5 to 10 minutes per game, and you can do a round of best of 3 in usually under half an hour. So if you see me in the future, I'm going to be at some Command Fest, I'm going to try to make it to Magic Cons in the future, or if you're just at an LGS or if you just happen to see me somewhere, I'll have this deck with me and I want to catch a game with you. Alright guys, let me know what you think. Bye.